Great. So we are going to continue on with this entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm going to invite Lawrence Groen up here. Lawrence Groen studied architecture at the University of Cincinnati with a focus on organic architecture. He founded the custom fabrication company Metro Lighting in 1993, along with his wife, Krista. And later, he founded West Berkeley Design Loop in 2012, Commotion West Berkeley in 2019, and Berkeley Built Magazine in 2020, all organizations that focus on design, sustainability, and community. So please welcome Lawrence.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's really great to be here myself. So again, I'm Lawrence Groen from Metro Lighting, a local manufacturing company. We've got a showroom down on San Pablo Avenue. I'd welcome you if you have time to come stop in and say hello. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a standard lighting showroom, but in other ways, we are unique. We design and build most of what we sell. You can barely see it in this slide, but in the very back is our manufacturing workshop studio. And so, people who come in, see what we do, and they can see us building their fixtures. This is my wife, Krista, and myself up on our roof. We've got 120 solar panels, a 21 kilowatt array that supplies 100% of our power for our showroom. But I'm here today to talk about bottle glass that we use in lighting. These are Jack Daniel's bottles. There's a lot of energy and time put into making bottles beautiful. They want them to be, the manufacturers want them to be appealing on a shelf or on your table. And we're making use of that embodied energy to create something new, beautiful. We're not the first to use bottles in unique ways. These are some bottles in walls, obviously. If you're not familiar with Earth Ships out of Taos, New Mexico, check that out. We also helped write the first Earthship book. I think I missed one. Okay. Long ago, Heineken created a bottle that was intended for reuse. These were bottle bricks, sort of like glass blocks. They were intended to be repurposed at the end of their life. Forward thinking for Heineken back in 1963. And other walls made out of bottles, beautiful glass, just other ways to repurpose them. So our process starts mostly sometimes direct from consumers who come to see me and drop off bottles, neighbors and friends, and local restaurants and bars. But a lot of what I get from the recycling center down on 2nd Street in West Berkeley. We attempted to go through the municipal stream, but too many of those bottles were dinged up from going through the process. So we abandoned that, and mostly I get them from the donation bins, because those are direct from consumer to the bin, and there's not a lot of opportunity for them to get cracked or dinged up. It's really a pretty small percentage of the bottles that are there that we can use in lighting glass, but we'll pick what we can out of the bins. Here we are taking some back to Metro Lighting, so that's maybe a typical day. Some days I'll only get a couple things, some days I'll get a couple dozen, but this is probably typical, getting just a handful. We'll bring it back to Metro Lighting, immediately wash the bottles. Then we store them in a warehouse area, sorted into types. And then I take about 100 at a time to a different facility where they're set up to do cutting and polishing. And this next part is kind of about that process. So we used something of a modified tile saw to cut the bottles. Here we're cutting off the top, and then that gets polished on a lapidary wheel. And cut the bottom and polish that. And occasionally we will core drill the top of the bottle so it's all the same, which leaves us with these bottles with the tops and bottoms cut off and with the surfaces polished. We bring them back to Metro lighting, where I soak them in simple green, sometimes overnight, which allows the labels to come off pretty easily in most cases. So then we've got all these beautiful bottle shades, and we have them on shelves. We have them available for people to use in lots of different ways. And again, you can see how pretty the bottles are. We've only cut off the top and bottom, so that's all in the manufacture and the design of the bottle itself. I guess one of our innovations in bottle glass use is to cut those off, so even though the bottles are different shapes and sizes, there's a uniform hole size. You can see in this slide, the assembly we use has a threaded socket that goes through the hole in the glass, and there's a threaded ring on the other side that holds it all together. So that makes it really easy for people to replace the glass if it gets broken, or to exchange it, or just for the glass to be totally interchangeable from fixture to fixture. Here they are in the showroom. Pendants, bottles can be used on pendants or sconces, table lamps, floor lamps, and some others in complete assemblies. So you in the industry are probably very familiar with bottle glass, cullet. You have the recycling center. We have a slightly different way of upcycling some of them. And I hope if you have the opportunity to help us source some of these bottles, we're always looking for the ones that are shown here. I put a list in LinkedIn on my profile and on the post from this event. So if you are using some of these bottles, or if you can help me connect with restaurants or bars that use these sizes, they're mostly large size. The 1.75 liter size is mostly a consumer size, not so much a restaurant size. But yeah, you can send me a note, lawrence@metrolighting.com.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Do we have a few questions from our audience? Yep, right here in front.
Thank you, Lawrence. Great presentation. I'm just curious, with those types of bottles out there, do you hit up the bars? Because they're the ones that are probably going to generate the most of these and the cleanest looking ones.
Well, that's true, but most bars use the 1 liter size bottles, or the 77.5 milliliters. So the 1.75 liter, it's pretty large for bars, and it may actually be against regulations for them to be using that size. So I've talked to a lot of local bars and restaurants, and there's some that use large bottles, and then we set up a relationship, and I'll stop by every couple of weeks. But that's sort of slowed down, obviously, during the pandemic. I meant to say we've probably gone through just a few thousand bottles so far, and hopefully more. And what I didn't cover was we also do other upcycling in our showroom. We've got a pendant made from a bicycle rim, and we use the gear cassette at the canopy, and that often has 3 or 4 bottle shades on it. There were some other questions?
Yeah, I think we've got one question over there on the side.
The question is what is it about these particular bottles that makes them useful for us, if I understand correctly? These are kind of the most popular because of the architecture of the bottle. People really are drawn to the square shapes in lighting. So when I can't use ones that have a handle, and it's nice when the shape is really beautiful and if there's some texture, but not too much texture. Except for the bullet bourbon, people love that texture. And the bourbon, it's really good.
Do we have any questions from our virtual audience?
This question is from Courtney Scott at Zero Waste Sonoma. Do the staff at the recycling centers ever ask you to leave?
No, I've got a really good relationship. I've gotten to know most of the people in West Berkeley by name, so it's all very friendly. And right now, that's the only recycling center I'm visiting. So send other people my way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. I am going to go visit that store very soon. Great. So our next speaker is Matt Zimbalist. Matt has been in the waste reduction and ecological building world for the past decade. Through his work as a builder, designer, and engineer, he has created state-of-the-art aquaponics systems, campus-wide gray water installations, nutritive cycling systems, and implemented farm efficiency programs. He currently heads operations, marketing, product, and strategy for the waste reduction organization Re-Up Refills in Oakland. So please welcome Matt.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. That was cool following Lawrence because I used to dabble with trying to make my own glass fixtures out of bottles and they never came out nearly that good. So excited to see. Thank you for the introduction. As you said, my name is Matt Zimbalist. I'm a co-founder of Re-Up Refills. We're a community-based refill shop in Oakland. We provide businesses and individuals the opportunity to rethink the way they do grocery. So people come in, use their own containers or use ours and re-up on all their essentials such as pantry items, dishwasher detergent, laundry, shampoo, conditioner, the works. So it's kind of an opportunity to just go refillable and ditch the single-use waste. Also currently a regional economic competitiveness officer at Stop Waste, Alameda County's waste authority. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about single-use, recycling, and refill. To give a little bit of a backstory, the creation of our modern day plastics really started in late 19th century. We were, interestingly enough, trying to look for an alternative to ivory because there was a big shortage because billiards was on the rise. And so there was a design challenge on the East Coast to try to promote a material that would do something similar. And so that's where the first kind of creation of what we now see as these malleable plastics started. And it was in the beginning of the 20th century in 1907 that Bakelite was created, which is similar to that image on the far right there with the bracelets. And that was the creation of the first concept of plasticity in a material. And it's kind of led the way to where we are today of the ubiquitousness of these really moldable, really malleable, really inexpensive and durable plastics that make a lot of sense in our society and have a lot of practical uses. For us at our organization, our aim is to try to curb the cycle of single-use plastics and single-use waste that we think there's an alternative path forward with. Look no further than the rise of plastics than World War II. Where there was a strong need to move away from scarce natural resources and make products really fast and cheap. So with a lot of R&D money from the US government, as well as the growth of energy and chemical producers in the US, there was a big drive to produce goods. So we saw this in nylon parachutes, rope, body armor, helmet liners. We even saw it in acrylics that went into aircraft during World War II. And so at the time, there's a massive growth in all these products. And there was kind of a need to put that production somewhere else too. So during World War II, there was a 300% rise in consumer household plastic use in the United States. And we've just continued to see that ramping up over time. And ours truly, ExxonMobil, is the biggest producer of plastics worldwide with 5.9 million metric tons, followed by Dow Chemical and Sinopec of China. Around the same time that we saw an increase in the ubiquitousness of plastics in our culture, moving into packaging and bottles, we also see a shift from what was at the time a focus on the responsibility of the manufacturers and producers of goods from a corporate responsibility perspective, and there became a shift onto the consumer. So in 1953, Vermont passed the First Nations Bottle Bill, which basically banned the sale of non-refillable bottles. Up until that time, refill was kind of the concept. And what was happening was in Vermont, a lot of people were basically littering glass bottles on the side of the road, and it started interfering with cattle and becoming an issue with them stepping on glass, and it just basically littering the highways. So this bill came about. And the same year, the American can and bottle businesses saw this as a kind of fundamental threat to their expansion of industry. So they created an organization, a nonprofit called Keep America Beautiful, as a great name. And the whole push was to focus the attention back on the consumer, saying, hey, if you're responsible for this product, you're going to do a good job and make sure it goes to the right place. And kind of taking the energy and the focus off of them as the producer of single use. So, you know, in the middle slide here, you can see a kind of famous ad that Keep America Beautiful did in 1971. It later became known as the Crying Indian campaign, where this man was showing up onto a modern day beach and seeing it littered with single-use disposables. The campaign was called People Start Pollution, People Can Stop It. Kind of the irony is that this indigenous actor is actually named Iron Eyes Cody. He's of Italian descent. And the whole thing kind of felt fraudulent, I think, now that we know that who was behind it and who was funding it and what the real shift of focus was. So that still lingers with us today. We're all familiar with these images these days, plastics in our world, plastics in our environment. It's really hard to go to any beach or waterway in America or in the world right now and not see plastics on the beaches. We recently at our organization did a beach cleanup, and our intention was to pick up plastics, but what we found was they had all disintegrated into small particles and more microplastics, which became increasingly harder to get out of the actual environment and out of spaces. And the sad reality is that we continue to see microplastics turning up. A lot of research has shown that it's in deep oceans, Antarctic ice, fish, drinking water, and most recently, human placentas and falling rain. So the problem is real and it's definitely with us. We also see it in terms of impact on water quality, fossil fuel production, and on our landfills. So that's the bleak side of things. And now for the optimistic part of the presentation, the path forward. So the things that give me some excitement and joy and potentially offer some solutions for some of these problems are extended producer responsibility, consumer awareness, the rise of circular economies, and the increase of refill shops. This is a photo of our shop here in our bulk food section. In 2021, Maine and shortly thereafter, Oregon passed the first extended producer responsibility legislation in the US around packaging. And it mirrors what's going on already in Europe, where the manufacturer of the packaging is responsible for the end use life of it. So if it's not readily recycled, they would be responsible to pay the state or municipalities to dispose of or recycle those materials. And the goal is to really push them to use things that are more readily recyclable or readily compostable. Circular economies, which you might have already heard a little bit about, is a really promising solution that is happening right now. It changes this way of linearly thinking about production and consumption from natural resource extraction to manufacturing to production, sale to a waste stream, and it reverts it into a circular loop where that raw material gets integrated, but then it gets recycled and repurposed throughout the system kind of forever is the idea. It doesn't always work that perfectly, but that's the concept. So at our refill shop, volumetrically, the overwhelming majority of all of our product comes in refillable containers. So our manufacturers are local. They drop us off the containers with the product. When we're done, we'll take it back to them. They'll reuse it. So diverting that large waste stream there. And we're trying to apply that same logic to our consumers at the shop as well. So they'll bring their container, they'll refill it, and then they'll just keep reusing it. We also have seen a large increase in refill shops. So in 2019, there was an estimated 400 worldwide. I think this number is about triple now. Just ourselves, we started during the pandemic, and every week I get calls from multiple different people or organizations trying to start their own refill shops. And as in along the lines of consumer changing, consumer awareness, unfortunately, the rise of plastics around us has given rise to a movement of people understanding and starting to process that we needed a better way, and we need to change the way we think about consumption and the way we consume. So these are 3 images of our refill shop here in North Oakland, where people are coming in and using their own containers and refilling. And it's an opportunity to reimagine the way we consume and reimagine what a grocery store looks like. So our concept is to not necessarily change the world with the shop, but to change the way we think about how we should be getting our goods, and to hopefully apply that logic to legislation and to the way we consume other products as well. So, you know, we welcome the opportunity to do educational outreach like this, and we're excited to be in the waste reduction space. So with that, cheers to a better planet. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Do we have some questions for Matt? Yep, up top.
I'm sure you were affected by the pandemic, but what did you do to ease people's minds with touching and all that post-pandemic?
It's a great question. I think that, you know, we all kind of know this now, but, you know, the pandemic really created an opportunity for single use to really flourish in our society, with a lot of kind of misinformation in the beginning about surface spread and touch. So, you know, from the beginning, we just followed the science on spread, but for the first year of the pandemic, no customers came into our shop. So we turned it into a counter service only and staffed it all the refilling. So people would come in, bring their containers. We'd kind of write down a menu of what they want and weigh them and refill them for them. We've since moved back as the science is caught up, and public health departments have helped, you know, move back into a refillable concept. So we're lucky to be in a county where there is good literature and research on what is safe and what's not. And our customers have definitely welcomed the opportunity to do their own refilling.
Awesome. Any questions from our virtual audience?
Yes, we have one from Manette C. Any requirements of materials accepted and sold at your shop? Question, organic, question mark.
Little confused by the question, but I'm going to lead right into it. Our core concept is it's either refillable or it's compostable. So we basically try not to carry anything that's not going to be something you can keep and refill, or that it will go straight into your compost pile at home. So we do carry a lot of alternative products, such as compostable floss, compostable pop-up sponges, to kind of replace the plastic alternatives you buy at a grocery store. And the idea is, if it is something that is expendable, that you have a place that it can very easily and quickly compost at your own home. Ethically sourced. So all of our food, oils, vinegars, anything that can be consumed is always going to be certified organic. The overwhelming majority of it, we do single source, so it all comes from one place. So it's really easy to track supply chain, and it's really easy to find vendors that are really producing high quality stuff that, our core concept is triple bottom line. So good for the consumer in terms of health, good for the planet at the same time. Really thinking about labor in our employees and also the employees of people that produce. And at the end of the day, something that hopefully is sustainable economically, because a lot of refill shops aren't, and we're trying to be a model for one that can be.
Any other questions? We've got a couple. How about over here on the top corner?
I was just wondering what you do to get the cost comparable to other stores, especially for lower income folks, and if you accept EBT and things like that.
The short and quick answer is we don't. No, I'm just kidding. We do try, and I do think it is a question of scale. Most grocery is done on a volume basis, so their whole model is to produce and sell a lot of things at low margins for themselves. Because we're such a small store and a small footprint, we're not able to do that same concept. So what we do is we're trying to be really selective with what we carry. And I think we shy away from things that seem really cost prohibitive. And we try to, on average, be cost competitive with a natural food store. So we're pretty cost competitive around here to like a Berkeley natural grocer or an Alameda natural grocery. We'll be less cost competitive with a Safeway, Trader Joe's, or a Berkeley Bowl. But it's surprising because we don't necessarily derive the highest margin for each product. We'll really try to be in line with that organic section of a store. And in general, sometimes we actually find that some of our stuff is just better price. So like all of our Dr. Bronner's ends up coming in at a better price than at a normal grocery store, where some of our stuff will be a little bit higher, but we generally try not to be above 20% over what you can find somewhere else. We are currently in the process of adding EBT. It's a little bit of a challenge based on the point of sale systems that are available. There are not a lot of them that are affordable enough for a small business to provide that service, but we just switched ours this last week. And so in the next month or two, we will be able to provide EBT.
Awesome. And we do have a little bit of time. I think I saw one more question. Was there one more question? Oh, never mind. Okay, great. Well, then, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.